Hello and welcome back to TwinCam. Today is my first drive in Melvin in about a week and a half because I've been on holiday and doing other things and generally being busy. But there is a massive traffic jam ahead, so now is probably a good time to start talking. On the 12th of August, which was a couple of weeks ago now, today is the 24th of August. Anyway, on the 12th of August was 1 year since I started TwinCam, which means it's over a year since I decided to go to a small abandoned pub car park near me, point my iPhone 6 at this little metro here and start rambling. And I haven't stopped rambling, to be honest, although I now plan things a little bit more carefully than I used to. And somehow in that time, more than 8,000 people have subscribed to the channel, so I'm enormously grateful. And as many of you will have seen, I've also got over 1 million views as well, which is just completely remarkable. I mean, not that I want to get bogged down in completely arbitrary figures, because at the end of the day, that's what they are. But it's just an understanding that people are actually willing to watch somebody like me ramble about cars, because I don't even drive the cars that I video because of insurance purposes, as many of you do know. I just talk about cars and I love it, and I'm not going to stop. So yeah, our first stop today is petrol, and then we're going to go on a little drive. I'm going to talk about a few things, and then I'm going to take a few questions as well, because a couple of months ago I said that I was thinking of starting a vlog, just a little vlog where I just answer questions and talk about things that you lot want me to talk about. And so I hadn't got around to doing that because I've been doing other things, and so today I'm going to do that, with the starting point being that it's now over a year since I started TwinCam. Absolutely amazing. But I think I'm going to have to turn around because we've been stopped for like 2.5 minutes now, which I'm not happy with. We're moving into second gear. This is some real progress. Before I actually get into it, I might as well talk about a couple of things with Melvin before I can get to the petrol station, which is only down the road, but I have a feeling it's going to take me 10 minutes. Melvin runs perfectly fine, the engine's very smooth, everything is absolutely fine. The suspension will need regassing at some point soon, but I don't have the money for that at the moment, so that's on the to-do list further down the line. Bodywork's fine. I'm worried about emissions, even though I had the carburetor rebuilt last year. Oh yeah, MG steering wheel, which is back on now. A lot of people mentioned that the MG steering wheel was gone, and yes it was, but now I've got it back on. I just took it off for a photo shoot last week, so now I've got the MG wheel back on, but it is tatty around the edges. The leather is in pretty poor condition, so yeah, let's just turn right here and go over loads of speed bumps, which is always fun in a car like this, like that. Yeah, MG steering wheel's back on, and the MG steering wheel feels so much better than the standard Rover one. It's just, everything about it is nicer. I'm going a little bit too quickly over those bumps. Tyres are all fine. I had new tyres last year, and I'm going to be putting on those GTA Steels anyway at some point in the future, so yeah. Exhaust, there is a small exhaust leak that was on the MOT last year, but I hope that is okay and isn't going to be an issue for this year's MOT. It shouldn't be, as much as I can tell there's an exhaust leak, and I knew there was one last year. I don't think it's bad enough for an MOT fail. I might get an advisory for the oil leak as well, but it doesn't actually leak anywhere near enough oil for it to be considered a failure. But it does, you know, if you catch it at a certain point, it can look like it's leaking a lot of oil, but it really isn't. This is absolutely taking the mick. Why on earth is the traffic so bad today? So, what else? That's it, really. There are a couple of other little bits, again, as I said, something that I think it might fail the MOT on, but I'm not going to mention it until the MOT actually happens, and I'll see whether it does fail or not. Yeah, we are on 69,365 miles, which is not as many miles as I thought I'd be doing in Melvin this year. So it means I've done 10,000 miles. Thought I'd be doing a few more, but COVID happened, and so I've not been going anywhere near as far away from home as I usually would be. I've not been doing as many videos, as you've seen by the change in my content over this time. With brochure videos, stuff like that. Just branching out from just doing car, which I prefer. I think it's a bit more freeing, and as people do enjoy some of those things. These brochure videos are actually turning out to be really quite successful. People seem to be enjoying them just as much as they seem to be enjoying the actual car review videos. So I'm happy about that, but I don't want to make that a thing forever. That is just a COVID thing, but I enjoy doing them, so I will do them every now and then, but not every week, is what I'm saying. You might notice I'm putting out more videos as well at the moment, because I can, and I'm taking this a little bit more seriously than I did. Rather than just putting out one video a week, I'm doing a few more. So when I first started TwinCam, I just decided, mainly off the backs of a few other people that had been doing it, mainly Steph, I Drive a Classic, and Ian Seabrook, obviously Hubnut, because, well, Mr. Hubnut made me realise that as long as you can actually talk, which I'm still not sure if I can or not, but if you can just ramble about cars, it doesn't matter whether you've got a film crew behind you. You can just point your phone at yourself, talk, and people will watch it, and people enjoy it, and the content is good. So that's partly why I started doing it. And the other thing is, Steph from I Drive a Classic, I'm friends with Steph, and she started her channel a few months before I did. It must be about 5 or 6 months before, and she had quite a hit with hers, so I thought, well, why not start my own? So I did, and I very quickly realised that just using an iPhone wasn't going to cut it, because the audio was dreadful, and the video wasn't quite up to scratch. So I've ended up with a GoPro, which you can see over there. Well, you can't see, but I can see, you're watching me on it, and a little microphone here. So this isn't high budget, but it's higher than just pointing my phone at myself. The editing isn't up to scratch either. I'm still using free editing software, but it's okay for now. But I've figured out how I can make these videos a little bit more watchable, so they're a little bit more formatted than they used to be, and they're a little bit easier to watch. The writing is a little bit better for them. I have started actually writing my videos as well, so rather than just me going up to a car and just saying everything I know about it, they are a little bit more carefully scripted now. That does mean that, so if I just avoid a taxi that's decided to open its door in the middle of the road, it does mean that a few things might be missed out, a few things I might think, no, doesn't quite fit in with the narrative of the video, so I'll leave it out, but generally, it's just making my content a little bit better, and there is a TVR behind me, very nice. Right, we've now finally got a little bit more speed up. We're doing 40 miles per hour because it's a 40 mile an hour speed limit, and I seemingly have even less fuel than I thought I did. We are now well into the red, but Melvin's fuel gauge lies, so I know that I've got a bit more petrol than the car tells me I have. If there's too much wind noise, I'm sorry, but I want the sunroof open, so there you go. The ventilation in Metro, as I've said a number of times, is brilliant. So I've got all these fresh air vents on, and I'm keeping nice and cool on this. It's about 20 degrees today. Not mega hot, but nice and warm. There's a guy sitting over there that looks like Harry Maguire, but I know it's not Harry Maguire because he's in a Greek prison. At the start, mainly I was doing friends' cars, and therefore a lot of British Leyland stuff, because obviously I have a British Leyland car. The cars that my friends have, a lot of them are British Leyland cars as well, so I did a lot of BL stuff at the start, which made a lot of people believe that my channel was just BL stuff. But as people have very, very kindly offered me their cars, I've been able to start doing more. So there are a few videos coming up, some that should be quite interesting, some maybe not so much, but I enjoy them all. There's usually a wedge-shaped Rover 200 in that car park, but it doesn't seem to be there today. A couple of wedge-shaped Rover 200s actually. R8 generation cars. I'd love to do a video on one of them. If you've got one, lend me it please. I'd love to do an R8 Rover. Also, I'm going to do a video on a Rover 75 soon, which is going to be split into multiple parts, because the Rover 75, to me at least, is a really, really interesting car. And yes, I did do a video on it last year, but it was rubbish, so ignore that one. And I want to split it into a few parts so I can talk about a few different things without people getting bored and without it ending up half an hour long, because the last one did, and this one will inevitably be longer. So I want to split it up into a video about the development of the Rover 75, then one actually going around the car itself, one on a brochure of course, because I have the brochure. But finally, we are managing to get some petrol. So here we go. Let's see what fuel economy Melvin has got over the last couple of weeks. Right, microphone is off, so if you can't hear me, then that's my own fault. But yeah, I've been to fill up with fuel and I couldn't be bothered putting the microphone back on because I thought I wouldn't need it for a little bit anyway. But here we are, and I thought immediately, I should probably talk to the camera again. So filled up Melbourne with 20 litres of fuel and 49.2 miles to the gallon. So that's pretty good, nearly 50 mpg. That's about what I'm starting to expect now from this little car. It is very, very economical, and I do tend to drive pretty economically as well. But I mentioned before the fuel gauge, or if I've cut that bit out of the video, then I won't have mentioned it, but be assured I did mention it when I was recording. Here it is reading, with a full tank, just under 3/4 of a litre. In fact, not just under, quite a bit under 3/4 of a tank. So the fuel gauge completely lies. And so we're towards the bottom of the red, and I still had 10 litres of fuel left, because Metros have a 30 litre tank. Well, depending on who you believe, it's either 30 litres or 33 litres. I think it's probably 33 litres, judging by how much I've been able to put in it in the past. But yeah, 20 litres of fuel, a full tank, and it's reading under 3/4. So Melvin feels back to his fighting self again. I'm getting quite warm because I've closed the sunroof, and it's a warm day, and I don't want to put the blower on because that will spoil the quality. I thought I might be able to get through then, but I couldn't. Yeah, having the blower on would spoil the sound quality even more than it already is spoiled, so I won't bother with that. I would rather roast. And this car is a ridiculously easy car to drive. It's just a nice car to drive all around. It's just lovely. Every time I get into another car and then get back into this, I think, yeah, correct decision was made. We're buying this car. Absolutely no regrets whatsoever. It just makes me happy. Every time I get in Melvin, he makes me happy, and that's all you can ask for a car, really. Makes such a good noise as well. So as I mentioned before, I was thinking of doing a little vlog thing, just mainly so that I can talk about what I fancy talking about, rather than putting it into a proper video, which might be a bit stupid. Just little topics of conversation, and news, and just things I fancy talking about, and questions from you lot as well, most importantly. So we'll get to some questions soon. So I am now back in the car park that I started Twincam in a year ago, just over there in fact is where I recorded my first video. And yes, there is a dreadful bin over there that you can probably see, but let's just ignore that and pretend everything is nice, like the trees behind me. But anyway, I have some questions here that I have to answer. These are collated from ages ago when I asked for some questions and didn't answer them. So these are all from a couple of months ago. But let's go. Robert asks, "Hi Ed, it would be good to hear about future cars coming up for review so we know what to look forward to. Also, what car do you think you will buy next, and will you keep Melvin?" First of all, yes, I will be keeping Melvin. Melvin is staying for as long as I can possibly keep him because I love this little car. But if there's any car I could choose right now to go alongside Melvin, I'm not sure, but I think it would be something big and wafty. Not that I could really afford to run one, or to run one in terms of insurance and probably fuel, because I'd want something petrol and V6. So yeah, what would be the next car? At the moment, something big and wafty, but more sensibly, something like a Peugeot 306, because they're awesome. But I don't know, it changes every day with what car I want next, so you know, it's a terrible question because I never have a correct answer for it. And also, here are future cars coming up. Okay, I like the element of surprise, of not saying things, but it would also be nice for people to hear what cars I do have coming up, because then people can get excited about them and look forward to it. So, I have coming in the next few weeks a couple of Ford Capris. I have a Mark II Capri that I haven't videoed yet, but I will have done by the time you see this, and I have a Mark III Capri 2.8 injection, which you will have seen. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen it on a picture I put up there last week. But they will both be coming one after the other, so I can talk about the Mark II Capri and then the Mark III Capri. So that's what I've got at the moment. There are a few more in the pipeline, but none recorded yet. Well, there is one recorded, but I'm not going to put it up because it wasn't very good. I'm going to go and re-record it. Psycho63 says, "Hi Ed, would you see yourself with a nice little collection of cars in the cars..." I'll try that again. Psycho63 says, "Hi Ed, would you see yourself with a nice little collection of cars in time, space permitting?" Well, yeah, obviously, but space permitting is the biggest one. Of course, financially permitting is also very important, but space permitting, yeah, I don't have room for another car, so it's Melvin or something else at the moment, but Melvin. Next question from a guy that just has numbers in his name. Lovely. "I learned to drive in a Metro in the late 90s, and my first car was a 1989 Citroen AX. Brilliant. Love a Citroen AX. Any chance of you filming a head-to-head test between a Metro and an AX?" I'd love to. I just need to be offered a Citroen AX first. AX is a brilliant car. I love Citroen, so just because of the engineering that went into them. And so the AX stands out as one of the great small cars from the 1980s, just thanks to its lightweightness. It is brilliant and very, very practical as well. Some of the design touches in the AX are brilliant. So yeah, head-to-head test between a Metro and an AX at some point, yes. But more importantly, a video on an AX. But I need to be offered one. So if anybody does have a Citroen AX, get in touch with me. I'd love to do a video on one. Kevin, what car would you pick from each decade, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and why? Right. That's a really tricky question, and I probably should have planned this. Well, first of all, I want to have three very different kinds of cars. If I've got three cars, one from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, I want three different types. I don't want three super minis, and I don't want three supercars. I want three different things, and I want them all to be cool, well, what I think is cool. And I need to choose very carefully, because there are cars that can span all three of these decades that are the same car, but I'll put them in a particular decade so that I can have something else from the 90s, let's say. So, from the 80s, what do I have from the 80s? Oh, there are so many. Well, Lotus Esprit Turbo would be one of them. An S13 Nissan Silvia would also be one of them. Proper Silvia, not a 180SX or anything like that, a proper Silvia saloon / coupe, rather than a hatchback. Proper Nissan Silvia, MG Metro 1300, an MG Maestro 2-litre EFI would be awesome as well. A Rover Vitesse, that's an SD1 Vitesse. There are just so many, there's just too many cars to name. Ferrari 308 is another one.
Oh, I want all of them. I think for the 80s, just for its peak 80s-ness, I would go for the Lotus Esprit HC Turbo, because they're awesome. From the 90s, I would go for... Oh, I don't know. This is really tricky. Because I want a Rover 75. But that can be in 90s or 2000s, so I've got to decide what do I actually want. Now, I'm going to miss out loads of cars here because I'm just not thinking about them. There'll be stacks of cars that I really, really love that I've forgotten about, but from the 90s, I'm struggling a bit about what car. I mean, I could still choose most of the later choices. I could still have an MG Maestro. I could still have an MG Metro 1300 from the 90s, or I could have a Metro GTI. That'd be awesome. But I want a Rover 75. But that can go in the 2000s. So I think from the 2000s, it's going to be a Rover 75 2.5 litre V6 Connoisseur SE. But from the 90s, I want to go for something. I've gone for a Rover 75, which is wafty. I've gone for a Lotus Esprit, which is for B-road blasts. So what else do I want? I think I might want an estate. I want something practical. I mean, the Rover's relatively practical, but I want a saloon 75. So I kind of want an estate, or maybe a little city car. So I think the choice will be between well, obviously Melvin, but we're taking Melvin out of the equation here. So either a Metro GTI 16 valve MPI, or I don't know, or a BMW E30 Tourer. That'd be awesome. 6-cylinder. It's got to be a 6-cylinder because a BMW isn't a BMW if it's not 6 cylinders. Yeah, so a 325i Tourer or a Metro GTI, but I really can't choose. So from the 80s, I'd have a white Giugiaro designed Lotus Esprit HC Turbo. White with probably the red interior and a big sunroof. Red interior is just so of its era, but I love it. From the 90s, I just can't choose. It would be between a BMW 325i Touring E30. That might also be white, actually. White with black interior, probably. That's a bit boring, though, so I think I might actually go for the Metro GTI with the awesome cloth seats with the lightning stripe in them. The MPI engine, so 103 brake horsepower, but I want the lattice spokes from the SPI. Of course, sunroof, probably in British Racing Green, because that's just awesome. And then from the 2000s, a Rover 75 2.5 litre V6, Connoisseur SE, Wedgwood blue with the cream interior. There you go. That took a lot longer than I thought it would do. Stephen, what made you want to start your channel, and how did Melvin get his name? Well, I started TwinCam, as I mentioned before, actually, completely, you know, having not thought about this question. I was influenced by a number of people, so I don't know what I want to do with my life generally. So that's one thing. I love cars, and I just love talking about cars, and so this is just a forum for me to ramble. But also because I saw other people doing YouTube things. So Steph from iDriver Classic, we became friends early last year, and she started her channel very shortly after that, and so she kind of spurred me on to start mine as well. But also Ian Seabrook, Mr. Hubnut, because I always thought it'd be brilliant to do something like this, to talk about cars, but I always thought I can't do that because I've not got a film crew, I've not got decent enough equipment. But he made me realise that you can actually just point your camera at yourself, point your phone at yourself, and as long as you can, you know, make something come out of your mouth, then, you know, people will watch. And so he probably made the biggest impact in that he made me realise you don't need loads of fancy equipment. You can just talk to a phone and it'll work. So how did Melvin get his name? Well, I bought Melvin in May 2017. and at the time I was at college, sixth form, doing my A-levels, and so before I actually collected Melvin, but after I'd agreed to buy him, me and a couple of my mates were sat down at college during a free period or something like that, and we were trying to come up with names because I knew I wanted a name for my mad car, and I wanted something either begin with R or M, you know, so it would tie into the either Rover or Metro, but preferably M, and it couldn't be a name of somebody that I knew or was aware of, so it couldn't be. It couldn't be a lot of more common names. So one of my friends, Jack, came up with the name Melvin, and it stuck. And he actually didn't realise for quite a while that Melvin was actually still called Melvin, that had actually caught on. And so when I first started my Instagram page, which is now the Twin Cam Instagram page, which was called Melvin the Metro beforehand, Jack made a comment on my very first very first post on this account, this Instagram account, saying about how the fact that the Melvin name has caught on. So there we go. Terry asks, what's your day job and what are your ambitions? Well, as I've alluded to already, I'm a university student, so I am a freeloader, basically. Or at least a lot of people would like to believe that I'm a massive freeloader. But I'm a history student. Well, I study history and politics, and I'm massively interested in both those things, but I don't want to go into politics because it's just completely divisive, and I'm not quick enough for politics. So, not that, basically. And so I've always loved cars, obviously, and so I thought last year, I'm not doing anything during the summer, so I thought I'll start a YouTube channel and start doing Twin Cam, and now it's turned into this. So I still don't know what I want to do in my life. Maybe it might turn into doing this. That would be weird, but I'm nowhere near that point yet. But you can kind of tell my mindset by the fact that I'm talking about it. I'd quite like to be doing something like this because this is just awesome. But the only way I can do that is by putting out more videos, spending more time on them, improving my equipment, improving the way I speak to camera, improving the way I write, improving my research, improving everything, and then hopefully maybe I can get, you know, enough to be able to live on. But at the moment I couldn't live on this, and at the moment I live with my parents. I'm a university student, and yeah, that's what I do. Nathan, do you have any 1970s BL owner's manuals that actually describe how to drive the car? Well, this is a Morris Marina owner's manual. It's a Series 1 Marina, but I don't know what year it's from, but pre-1976. And, if I flick through a little bit here, it does say how to unlock the steering lock and how to start the car, very in depth as well, and it talks about the pedals here. So it says the pedals are arranged in the conventional positions, so it doesn't quite describe how to drive the car, but it's pretty close when it needs to talk about what the pedals do. The pedals are arranged in conventional positions. The brake pedal operates the brake hydraulic system and applies the brakes on all four wheels. Now that is luxury, having brakes on all four wheels. Yeah, it also says the brake lights function. Well, of course they do. Yeah, it gives you a really in-depth overview of everything to do with the car. It doesn't quite tell you how to drive the car, but it's quite in-depth. What I do have here, more interestingly than this 1970s one, is this, which is a 1959-1960 Morris Mini Minor owner's handbook, and this is awesome. This is a proper bit of history here, and the best thing, all the diagrams in these really old handbooks are absolutely awesome. I don't know whether you can see all them properly, but they're just awesome. But if we go to the start, it does actually say, let's go with pedals again, because we mentioned it in the last one. Pedal controls. The pedal controls are arranged in the orthodox positions, namely the clutch pedal, brake pedal and accelerator, reading left to right. Do not drive with your foot resting on the clutch pedal. There you go, that's what it says about pedals. Everything else is pretty normal. Gear lever. The gear lever is centrally situated and comes readily to hand. First and second gears are selected by moving the lever to the left and engaged by moving it forwards for first gear or backwards for second gear. So this is very nearly telling you how to drive. Yeah, it doesn't tell you how to... doesn't quite tell you how to drive, but it's very close. But yeah, so I do have a couple of old owner's handbooks that tell you how to do things that you should know how to do if you're owning a car, but there you go. So yeah, I do. A guy that called himself Cool Name. Very creative, you know, like 10 points for that. That's very creative. Are you planning any collaborations in the future? Well, as I've said on a number of occasions, I might do something with Steph from iDriver Classic at some point, but the virus, you know, made that difficult, and it still is making that difficult, but maybe at some point, but no, really, apart from that. Mark, well actually, I want to be very careful. My channel's very small, very small. I know there are a few people that watch my channel, a few people that like my channel, well, maybe people that say they like my channel, but don't really. Well, there are a few people out there that do like my channel. There are a few people that I watch as well, you know, that I know we both watch each other's channels, but my channel's very small, and I really don't want to ride on the coattails of anyone. I don't want to be artificially boosted by a collaboration with anyone. I quite like the idea of everything forming quite naturally on this channel. I don't know why, you know, that is a quicker route to success, but no, I'm not planning any collaborations really, apart from maybe with Steph at some point. Mark, maybe do some videos on modified cars from the golden era. Now, what do you mean by golden era? Do you mean the max power generation? Because you know, in 20 years time we'll probably be talking about today's modified cars as a golden era of car modifying, but nah. But I have done a couple of videos. Well, I've done one video on a modified car actually, and I'll be doing another one soon, but I'm not going to tell you anything about that yet because I don't quite know what's going on with it yet. I did a video on a Metro that had a 1.8 engine in it because it's a very common swap and they're quite interesting. But I'd love to do some videos on some modified cars, but they have to be unique or very modified, because cars that are subtly modified or just a bit modified aren't right for my channel, because I like to talk about the history of these cars and like to talk about how they are when they're standard. So having a car that's lightly modified doesn't really work with it, and I couldn't do a video on a car that's really highly modified and just do it as a normal video, because that's not how the car came from the factory, and that's very important to me that the cars are decent that I video. So a video on modified cars would be about the modifications, so it'd have to be quite modified for that. But I'm not a massive fan of a lot of modified cars. I like some modified cars. I like resto modded cars especially, but I like cars that are done in a certain... I like cars that are done in a very, very elegant style. I like them, you know, quite close to how they would have been when they left the factory, but as modified as you want underneath, but they have that aura of still of classic car, or of original car, rather than being massively modified. But anyway, I digress. I would like to do some videos. If people would like to offer me their madly modified cars, then please do. Mally Green. I owned an Allegro in 1981 and found it reliable. A lot of modern reviews say it is one of the worst cars ever made. What is your opinion? Well, the Allegro isn't as good as it should be. Let me just open this window because it's getting quite warm in here. The Allegro is a deeply flawed car in a lot of ways. You know, the main obvious one being the styling. But the Allegro is not a bad car. The Allegro is fine, but people love to hate the Allegro because it's an easy target. Number one, because BL. Number two, because it looks weird. And number three, because it's from the 1970s. And yeah, a lot of BL cars from the 1970s weren't very well built at all. They were really, really badly built. But the Allegro was quite well rust-proofed, apparently. So there's 1 point for the Allegro. They were fine. They were in the Isogonis mould. They were, you know, front engine, front wheel drive, transverse engine, hydrogas suspension. They were quite advanced under the skin. You know, they were decent little cars. But the worst car that's ever existed, ever, is not an Allegro. It just isn't. Because the worst car that's ever existed is one that we've never heard of, because it was so bad that nobody bought it, or it was so bad that it never ended up on sale. Yeah, they are the worst cars ever. The Allegro was not as successful as it should have been compared to its predecessor, and not as successful as the empire of British Leyland should have made it. But they sold something like 500,000 Allegros. How can a car that sold 500,000 units be considered a dreadful car? I don't quite understand it. So people just like to hate on it because British Leyland. A lot of people have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to these. A lot of people that aren't into cars at all like to say things about old British cars because it's fashionable, and Top Gear made it fashionable. But yeah, no, Allegros aren't dreadful cars. Allegros are flawed, but their flaws make them interesting as classics. A classic car that was just fine, to me, isn't that interesting. A Mark III Ford Escort, for example, was fine, but it was just fine. It's not, even though it was Ford's first front-wheel drive car in that class, you know, it was a massive departure from the Mark II Escort, I see it as just a car, whereas I see the Allegro as a story. The Allegro has a massive wealth of story behind it, and that's why it's interesting. So as a classic, the Allegro is brilliant, and it becomes more and more interesting as time goes on. So that's all the questions I have from today. Again, if you would like to ask me questions or suggest some topics that you'd like to hear me talk about in the next videos, which will be coming out probably in a couple of months, then please do. So thank you very much for watching. I'll have more videos coming along soon, and I hope you enjoy them when they do.